just gonna pick it up from where we left it off. My brother was telling us about the intersection of mining, how you have value on property, and the market around it, the communities around it, when it relates to the social labor plans, for example, of mining companies coming into communities. I think one specific area that I would also like to just touch on is that appreciating that you are from urban and town planning perspective. How would you then say we can collaborate more as mining communities or mining managers or mining executives with more town planning procedures, whereby we can actually have, instead of doing an SLP just for labor, looking at jobs, infrastructure rollouts? Because one thing I've noticed with planning departments, especially when you're now going to local municipality level, there have been some challenges in terms of rolling out infrastructure, especially in the new established settlement or in the remote areas, the villages. So perhaps you could just give us a perspective, some background into what is currently happening in that space.
Okay, that's a good question. So in pertaining to rolling out infrastructure, I'd say in terms of when you are building a new settlement, there's bulk infrastructure requirements there. Okay, so that needs to be considered in terms of in the development space, the development process. And also, look, it's a very complex sort of space when you are trying to, let's say, rezone a space pertaining to municipalities, because you have like a ward, and one ward is overlapping another one, and then each ward has sort of like differing requirements in terms of like we need to upload this IDP or whatnot. It's just very complex. But just bring it out broadly, and also linking into mining settlements do exist. I remember there's one near Magaliesburg.
Okay.
And yeah, that mining settlement is very much affected by what's going on. But if there's collaboration between them, if there's a more of like a shared interest, then I feel like in the mining space and in the planning space, we can have like a proper growth.
No, 100%. I appreciate that. And yeah, so one of the things I always look forward to engaging is when I do meet different professionals and people in the industry and with their different knowledge areas, I always kind of try to bring in other people I've met on and off camera as well. So there's one gentleman, his name is Zolani Zondi, and he's got a company, it's called X-Axis. And what X-Axis does is they work with mining communities, in particular to bring a sense of ownership to mining projects. And particularly, the membership numbers are comprised mostly of the beneficiaries or perhaps partners of the children or spouses of the people who are working in the mine. And it doesn't have to be an underground operation, it also includes surface operation. So briefly how the model works, which I'm gonna definitely maybe ask you a question on that, is the model comes into a community. We talk to say, what does the community need? What are the skills? Who can do what? Who's going to school? Just like sort of like social welfare in a way, but an ownership perspective whereby when we come together, you bring 1 rand, he's got 50 cents, she's got 2 rand, I've got 5 rand, or I've got 50 cents or 10 cents. We note it down, we keep a record, and every time we meet, we it's like a stokvel of sorts. And there's no minimum or maximum value that you contribute. And all these funds are pulled towards bringing change and driving change within the community, right? So how can this program, from your perspective, given your understanding, perhaps, how can we solicit more participation from the sector and industry in general? Then as well as students in mining as well, because now when we get to a point of finance, and when I hear property, I think finance. First thing that comes to mind when I hear property is finance, right? And it's not just residential, commercial property. How can we work together as different professionals and industries, as well as students currently, to leverage on the power of pool funds? Because I saw a 1 rand in my bag right now. I didn't know that 1 rand was there. It means that I can actually afford to perhaps come here at the ore house or mining house and say, hey guys, I've got 1 rand, can you guys start a donation or list or form or contribution? You come here, you've got 2 rand, you do that. We do that for a year, it's maybe 5,000 students. That's some good money. We need some work to be done on ore house, like you said, renovations and etc. etc.
Yeah.
That's where the money can come from. Perhaps maybe just, let's chop that.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear where you're coming from. And this takes me back to a summit I went to at the Critical Minerals Summit, right? Where I spoke to some miners. These were people in the mining space, but they were, it's more of an unregulated industry where they're operating. The name is escaping me now, what they're called. But what I learned from them is that as a community, you have the capacity to be a mine on your own. You might not know much, but how they were mining there is that, you know, they had their own mining site, and then whatever, if you had the equipment, you could come in and take whatever material that you want and go about finding a way to sell and gain value from that material. And it was benefiting their community. So I mean, it broke my mind a little bit, because I was like, how I understand a mine is in the context of mining rights, in the context of compliance. It's in this context where there's so much red tape before you can actually gain the value of what it is you want, which is what creates kind of that disconnect between companies and the communities. The companies have all this red tape to jump through, and there's the community saying, but you're in our area, so we need to benefit. So I realized very quickly that we actually don't need to be competitors in this, especially from that community where they were just mining from their own site, whether it was clay or whatever it is. We can benefit as the community from what we own through working together, and there's so much power in collaboration. That's something that I realized. Like, before, I used to think that as a mining company, the first thing that comes to mind is you need to have a lot of money to get this process started, which is why we see people, when they gain mining rights, they immediately sell them off to a bigger guy, like your Anglo-American